Now, your application disaster recovery methods, the goal here is of the protecting of an application against a disaster and to find a way to restore it as quickly as possible. The easiest solution is a cluster. A cluster is two or more servers that are working together to maintain the same application. The idea is that if one cluster goes down, the other one takes over. And because they're usually close together, they appear to the end user as a single server. Server doesn't know any better. They try to connect to the cluster, they connect to the cluster or to the server. If the one they actually were using went down, right, we just switch them over to the next one. There's two modes that they run in, active, passive. That means only one of the two is actually doing the processing, the other's just waiting for the first one to die. And active, where they're both taking over the processing, perhaps splitting up the workload. As with your applications, you should have a recovery method to protect against data loss in case of any hardware failure. The most common one we see is called RAID, the redundant array of independent disks. Sometimes people call them inexpensive disks. What it is a solution of two or more disks together in an array so that if any one disk fails, the others have the ability to take over and continue to function even while that disk is down. So you don't lose information. There's lots of different RAID methodologies out there, but it's just important that you are documenting if they have protection against that kind of failure. Of course, telecommunications can also succumb to natural disasters, but they have other events to plan for that are kind of unique, such as they have to worry about outages all over the place, right? Central switching office, cable cuts, communication software errors, security breaches, they have communication, their networks reach out a very long ways. So they have a lot of things, even power grid issues. Now, the things we can do to protect our networks is the use of redundancy. Now, redundancy means that I have two of things, right? If I have a router to get to the internet, I have two. If the first one dies, the next one immediately takes over. And that's not bad. We can also use it to help plan for extra capacity. We also might want to have multiple paths between routers. So if any one link or cable gets broken, we can take another direction. The routers can take care of themselves by communicating with a dynamic routing protocol. So if a change does occur in the topology, they can make up for that. They can find the other path. And a lot of what I just said is to eliminate that single point of failure. Now, alternative routing is a method of using an alternate medium. Now, I've seen this on some companies that do stock exchanges. That's all they do, right? They were SEC type of things. All they do is stock exchange and have their clients. I've seen them, with elaborate networks, but still have, if at worst case scenario, the ability to dial up so that they can continue doing stock trades. They don't want to go down any time at all. So they have their main internet connection and they have yet another way to get there if all else goes bad. Maybe an ISDN or a dial-up. Diverse routing is best described as dual-homed. That means I'm using two service providers, service provider A and service provider B. If something bad happens to service provider A, I got B, right? So that's kind of better than just one. Long-haul network diversity as well. That means that the service providers all have ways to get around if their next neighbor goes down. There's last-mile circuit protection and voice recovery as well. The DRP is a part of your business continuity process, as I said, and it's usually something we do after a business impact analysis and risk assessment was done. The things you should have in the DRP that you look for are the procedures for declaring a disaster, the criteria for a plan activation, how it's linked with the overarching plans, what people have what responsibilities, who your recovery teams are, your notification list of who to call, step-by-step explanation of the recovery process, procedures for recovery, and the vendors you can contact if you need new replacement parts, hardware, those types of things. Now, in the disaster recovery plan, you should identify teams and their responsibilities. Now, I'm going to tell you a lot of different things that these teams can do. I think most of the names are pretty intuitive. Incident response team, right? A disaster occurs, here's my team. Emergency action teams. Information security team. All right, what are they're about, right? They're about information and dealing with keeping it secure, getting it transported. Damage assessment, how bad's the building? How bad's the server? Emergency management, off-site storage team, software team, right? They get the software that you need, your operating systems from one site to another. Application teams, same thing. Emergency operations team. Some of these could involve personnel management too, right? To make sure people are safe, secure, injured, and the rest of it. Network recovery team, communications team, transportation team, getting stuff from one place to the other, right? User hardware team, data preparation records team, administrative support team, an important one, right? I got a hot site, let's get people over there. Supplies team, salvage team, relocation teams. All of these, and by the way, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, I only have 20 people in my company. All right, not all of these teams may be useful for you. Some people may be responsible for multiple parts of these teams, in which case you need to make sure you know what the prioritization is as far as their duties, but it's a part of what you can see in a plan. You also need the coordination teams, legal affairs, recovery testing, and a training team just to train people on what their teams are. To ensure that your critical activities of an organization are not interrupted in the event of a disaster, what we suggest, of course, is secondary storage media to be used to store your software's associated data. That could be on CDs, DVDs, tape drive, network-attached storage, storage area networks, but what are we talking about? Backups.